Hello, 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 and welcome to Herstory episode 22. Today we are going to be talking about Jackie O. We had the poll over on the Facebook page, the Herstory girls, and it was the battle for JFK, Marilyn Monroe versus Jackie O, and Jackie O came out on top. So without further ado, here we go. Sorry, I am very sweaty and I am very red. I've just come back from the gym. So yeah, please try and ignore my drenched state. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to hop straight in the shower and get into my pajamas. Get all cozy. So, Jackie Lee Kennedy Onassis, or Jackie Onassis Kennedy, whichever way you want to put it. First Lady of the United States and complete and utter style icon. Born Jacqueline Lee Bouvier on July 28th, 1929 in Southampton, New York, to Wall Street stockbroker John Blackjack Bouvier III and socialite Janet Norton Lee. She was baptized at the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola in Manhattan and was raised Catholic. Her sister Lee was born 4 years later in 1933. She spent her early childhood in Manhattan and at Lasata, the family's country estate in East Hampton on Long Island. She absolutely idolized her father, who called her the most beautiful daughter a man ever had. She was a confident child who was mad about horse riding. She also took ballet lessons, she was an avid reader, and she learned to speak Spanish, Italian, and French, as well as her native English. In 1935, she was enrolled in Manhattan's Chopin School. She was a bright student but often misbehaved. One of her teachers described her as a darling child, the prettiest little girl, very clever, very artistic, but full of the devil. The marriage of her parents was strained by her father's alcoholism and extramarital affairs, and the family also struggled financially after the Wall Street crash of 1929. They separated in 1936 and divorced 4 years later, with the press publishing intimate details of the split all over the front pages. Jackie was obviously deeply affected by this. Her mum quickly remarried Standard Oil heir Hugh Dudley Auchinschloss. Never say that. And Jackie gained 3 step-siblings from the union, with Hugh Jr., called Yusha, becoming one of her closest confidants. The marriage later gave her a half-brother and a sister, Janet and James, in 1945 and 47. The Auchinschloss Merrywood estate in McLean, Virginia, became the Bouvier sisters' primary residence. The girls retained a relationship with their father and also regarded their stepfather as a close paternal figure, not my drink over, who gave them a stable environment and a very pampered childhood. Where did I get to? There we go. Jackie attended Miss Porter's school in Farmington, Connecticut from 1944 to 47. She graduated among the top students in her class and received the Maria McKinney Memorial Award for Excellence in Literature. She then went on to Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York, where she joined the art and drama clubs and wrote for its newspaper, and she would travel back to Manhattan on the weekends. She made her debut in high society the summer before entering college, so she became a frequent attender at New York functions. She spent her junior year of 49 to 50 at the Sorbonne in Paris and the University of Grenoble. When she returned home, she went to George Washington University in DC, graduating with a BA degree in French literature in 51. Sorry, my dog is pit-pat, 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 pit-patting around on this wooden floor. Digger, can you lay down, please? Thank you. Whilst at uni, she won a 12-month junior editorship at Vogue magazine and worked for 6 months at the magazine's New York office. She also worked for 6 months at the Paris office. Before beginning the job, her and her sister Lee travelled to Europe, and the trip inspired her only autobiography called One Special Summer, which included Jackie's drawings. On her first day officially working for Vogue, sorry, I've confused myself. So she won the scholarship, and she was meant to do 6 months in London and 6 months in Paris. But when she actually starts on her first day, the managing editor told her to quit and go back to Washington because she was 22 and it was too old to still be single, and in another 12 months that would just completely destroy her marriage prospects. How crazy is that? Jackie followed her advice and returned to DC after only 1 day of working at Vogue. Digger, lay down. She moved back to Marywood and she was hired as a receptionist at the Walsh Times Herald, quickly given the chance to be the inquiring camera girl, posing with questions to people on the street and interviewing people of interest. She was engaged to a young stockbroker called John Husted at this time, but Jackie called off the engagement after a few months because she found him immature and boring. Digger, can you lay down, please? One day I will get through a video without one of the dogs mucking it up somehow. She found him immature and boring. Jackie was introduced to JFK, Mr. John Frederick Kennedy, at a dinner party in May 1952. The two shared a mutual love of reading, writing, travel, and John had also been raised Catholic. John was running for the US Senate in Massachusetts, and he proposed to her after the November elections. She accepted and resigned her post at the Times Herald. Their engagement was quickly officially announced on June the 25th, 1943. The two were married on September the 12th, 1953, at St. Mary's Church in Newport, Rhode Island. The wedding was considered the social event of the season, with an estimated 700 guests at the ceremony and a further 1,200 at the reception. Her wedding dress was designed by Anne Lowe, which now lives at the Kennedy Library in Boston, Massachusetts, should you wish to go and see it. They honeymooned in Acapulco in Mexico. I always wondered where Acapulco was. And set up a home called Hickory Hill in McLean, Virginia, which was a Washington, D.C. suburb. Jackie had a warm relationship with her in-laws, Joseph and Rose Kennedy. John suffered from Addison's disease and from chronic back pain, and in late 54 he underwent a near fatal spinal operation. I never knew that about JFK. Jackie suffered a miscarriage. That's annoying me. Suffered a miscarriage in 55, and in 56 gave birth to a stillborn daughter who they named Arabella. They sold Hickory Hill to John's brother Robert and bought a townhouse in Georgetown. They also had an apartment at 122 Bowden Street in Boston, which was their official Massachusetts residence during John's congressional career. I thought I'd written cancer. Jackie gave birth to daughter Caroline on November the 27th, 57. At the time, they were campaigning for John's re-election to the Senate, and they posed with Caroline for the cover of Life magazine on April 21st, 1958. They travelled together during the campaign, and it was quickly noted how much the crowds just loved Jackie. In November 58, John was re-elected to a second term, crediting Jackie's help as simply invaluable. So November 58. My mum would have been 2 months old. In 59, John decided he was going to run for president. And Jackie spent considerable time counseling him and updating his wardrobe in preparation for his campaign. John announced his candidacy for president on January the 3rd, 1960, and launched a nationwide campaign which Jackie accompanied him on for the first few months until she became pregnant and returned to Georgetown to rest, where she wrote a weekly newspaper column called Campaign Wife and gave interviews to the media. Jackie quickly became the subject of intense media attention due to her fashion choices. She was frequently featured in the women's magazines and was named one of the 12 best-dressed women in the world. On July 13th, the 1960 Democratic National Convention in LA, the party nominated John F. Kennedy for president. Jackie was heavily pregnant in Hyannisport when she watched the nation's first televised presidential debate between John and Republican candidate Richard Nixon. On November the 8th, 1960, John narrowly defeated Nixon in the election. 2 weeks later, Jackie gave birth to their son, John F. Kennedy Jr. John was sworn in as president on January the 20th, 1961. The hype around Jackie's fashion continued, and she became a real trendsetter, hiring Oleg Cassini to design her wardrobe. The media scrutiny on the couple was so much, she really became the first lady to have that kind of intense public scrutiny. So she had to hire a press secretary called Pamela Turner. She dedicated her time to the promotion of American arts and history. The restoration of the White House was her main contribution. She oversaw the redesign and replanting of the Rose Garden and the East Garden. She filled the property with historically significant pieces of furniture and made the family quarters cozy and comfortable to live in, adding a kitchen and new rooms for the children. And she also turned one of the upper floors into a nursery, like a creche for the people that worked at the White House, which I believe is still in use today. She hosted social events where figures from politics and the arts could mingle, and she contributed to the National Endowments for the Arts and for Humanities. Oh, I'm really thirsty. I'm talking really quickly. I've got a lot of pages of notes on Jackie. That's why it's nice to do a slightly more modern herstory, because we've got a plethora of information. Oh no, I've got an itchy back. Right in the middle. No, can't get to it. Can't get to it. It's gonna drive me batty. Okay, plow on through. She founded the White House Historical Association, the Committee for the Preservation of the White House, the White House Endowment Trust, and the White House Acquisition Trust. She wrote to find all the old pieces of furniture that previous presidents had taken with them when they left, to try and get them back. And she appointed a curator of the White House to look after them. Got the burps now. I drank too quickly and I've got the burps. Sorry, Jackie, that's not very respectful. I do apologise. She also initiated a Congress bill that all White House furniture would now be the property of the Smithsonian Institution. On February the 14th, 1962, she gave CBS News a tour of the White House, which was watched by 56 million viewers in the US and distributed to 106 countries worldwide. She was awarded an Emmy Award for it, the Academy of TV Arts and Sciences Trustees Award, the only First Lady to ever win an Emmy. As part of her First Lady duties, she made many official visits to other countries where she proved popular among international dignitaries, especially France, due to her knowledge of their history and culture and her ability to speak French. After visiting Austria, the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev sent her a puppy, the offspring of Strelka, the dog that had gone to space during a Soviet space mission. Cute. The president of Pakistan gave her a horse named Cedar. She was also fluent in Spanish and made a very good impression on trips to Mexico, Venezuela, and Colombia. In early 1963, Jackie was pregnant again, which led her to curtail her official duties. On August the 7th, she went into labour and gave birth to Patrick Bouvier Kennedy via emergency C-section. The infant's lungs weren't fully developed properly, and he was transferred to Boston's Children's Hospital, but unfortunately he died just 2 days after he was born. This affected Jackie deeply, of course, and she entered into a period of deep depression. Now we come to perhaps the most painful part of Jackie's life, losing a child and then losing her husband, the assassination of her husband, John. On November the 21st, 1963, Jackie and John embarked on a political trip to Texas. After breakfast on the 22nd, they took a short flight to Dallas with Texas Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie. Jackie was wearing a bright pink Chanel suit and a pillbox hat that John had picked out especially for her. A 9.5-mile motorcade was to take them to Trademark, where John was scheduled to speak at a lunch. John was seated next to Jackie in the third row of seats in the presidential limousine, with the governor and his wife in the seats in front of them. When the motorcade turned the corner into Elm Street at Dealey Plaza, Jackie heard what she thought was a car backfiring. The governor screamed. 2 more shots rang out, and Jackie's husband's head exploded. She quickly climbed out of the back of the vehicle to safety. John was rushed to Parkland Hospital 4 miles away, and Jackie insisted on being present in the operating theatre with him. After John was pronounced dead, she refused to remove her blood-stained clothing and continued to wear it as she boarded the plane home, and as she stood next to Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson when he took the oath of office as the new president. The unwashed suit was donated to the National Archives and Records Administration. Jackie took an active role in planning her husband's state funeral, requesting a closed casket, probably wise when he was shot in the head. By all accounts, I think Brother Robert wanted to have an open casket. The service was held at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle in D.C., with the burial taking place at nearby Arlington Cemetery. Jackie led the procession on foot and lit the eternal flame at his gravestone. Following the assassination, a new President Johnson set up the Warren Commission to investigate, who found Lee Harvey Oswald had acted alone in killing John F. Kennedy. Jackie didn't really care that much about the result of the Warren Commission because it wasn't going to bring her husband back, but she publicly supported the commission. And after their result was published, Jackie stepped right back from the public eye, only making a brief appearance in DC to honour Secret Service agent Clint Hill, who climbed aboard the limousine and tried to shield her and John from the bullets. She was offered a position of ambassador to France by President Johnson, but declined. Jackie would go on to praise Johnson's kindness to her after the assassination. He renamed the Florida Space Center after JFK. Jackie spent 1964 in mourning, rarely making public appearances, and was very likely suffering from PTSD. I think that's highly likely if your husband is shot in the head right next to you and his brains fall in your lap. She had very vivid flashbacks, apparently. Her and her children moved to a 15th floor penthouse at 1040 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan just to try and have some privacy. In the following years, she only really left the house for events dedicated to John, such as the opening of the JFK Presidential Library and Museum. In 1967, during the Vietnam War, she travelled to Cambodia as America's unofficial roving ambassador, and in 1968 attended Martin Luther King's funeral service in Georgia, although the large crowds did frighten her a lot and reminded her of John's death. She relied very heavily on John's brother Robert after his death. They had been close beforehand anyway. He became a kind of surrogate father to her children, and she supported his run for US Senator for New York and his bid for presidency later on. So just after midnight on June the 5th, 1968, Robert was mortally wounded by enraged Palestinian gunman Sirhan, moments after he had been celebrating his victory in the California Democratic primaries. Jackie rushed to his side along with Robert's wife Ethel and their brother-in-law Ted, but Robert never regained consciousness and he died 26 hours later. This sent Jackie into another spiral of depression where she became completely terrified for her and her children's lives. She literally thought people were picking off Kennedys at this point. On October the 20th, 1968, Jackie married her longtime friend Aristotle Onassis, a wealthy Greek shipping magnate who provided the security she so desperately craved. They were married at Skorpios, Onassis's private Greek island. Nice. The marriage brought her adverse publicity, and she actually lost her Secret Service protection as the widow of a US president. She became the target of paparazzi who followed her everywhere and dubbed her Jackie O. She retained a close relationship with remaining Kennedy brother Ted and attended lots of public events with him. Aristotle's health began to deteriorate following the death of his son Alexander in a plane crash in 1973. He died 2 years later of respiratory failure, aged 69, in Paris. Jackie fought Aristotle's daughter Christina hard and eventually, after 2 years of legal battles, accepted a settlement of $26 million and waived all rights to their property and estate. After Aristotle's death, Jackie returned permanently to the US from Greece. It's just too much to ask that we'd get through one video without one of them chiming in, giving their opinion. Yes, she returned permanently to the US after Aristotle's death. After almost a decade of avoiding public events, she appeared at the 76th Democratic National Convention, where she supported Ted's unsuccessful presidential bid. She took a job at Doubleday as an associate editor, and in the 1970s, she led a historic preservation campaign to save Grand Central Terminal from demolition. In the 1980s, she protested against skyscrapers being built around Central Park so they wouldn't ruin the view. And in the early 1990s, Jackie supported Bill Clinton and contributed money to his presidential campaign. In November 1993, Jackie was thrown from a horse while fox hunting in Virginia. This caused her health to deteriorate, and the following month she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in her neck. She started chemotherapy and continued working at Doubleday, but by May the cancer had spread to her spinal cord, brain and liver. On May the 19th, 1994, at 10:15 p.m., Jackie died in her sleep in her Manhattan apartment, aged 64, surrounded by her family, her books, and the things she loved. Her funeral was held on May 23rd, 1994, at the same church she had been baptized in. She was interred at Arlington alongside John F. Kennedy, their son Patrick, and their baby daughter Arabella. President Bill Clinton delivered a eulogy at the service. She was survived by her children Caroline and John Jr. and 3 grandchildren, and she left an estate valued at $43.7 million. Fun facts about Jackie O. I feel like I shouldn't call her Jackie O now that I know that it was a derogatory term that the press used against her. I'm going to make a concerted effort not to use Jackie O anymore. Jackie remains one of the most popular first ladies, arguably the most popular until Michelle Obama. She was featured 27 times on the annual Gall Up list of the top 10 most admired people of the 20th century, higher than that of any US president, due to her fashion sense and later after her husband's assassination for her poise and dignity. Fashion. You can't talk about Jackie Kennedy without talking about fashion. So Jackie preferred French couture. She loved Chanel, Balenciaga, and Givenchy. She disliked prints very much. Very rarely will you see a picture of Jackie wearing any kind of print. Digger, I don't want to hear any more from you tonight. She's done nothing but make noise. She was criticised for not wearing US designers, though, so she began to wear Norman Norell, Ben Zuckerman, and Stella Sloat. She preferred clean-cut suits with knee-length skirts and three-quarter sleeves, sleeveless A-line dresses, above-elbow gloves, low-heeled pumps, notch collar jackets, and pillbox hats. Her style was copied and called the Jackie look by commercial manufacturers, as well as her famous bouffant hairstyle, which was emulated by young women everywhere. She later preferred wide-legged pantsuits and large lapel jackets, gypsy skirts, silk headscarves, and large round sunglasses, beltless white jeans, and black turtlenecks. And you'll see a lot of that in her later life. She's also famous for her triple strand pearl necklace, which was designed by Kenneth J. Lane, and her berry brooch, which looks like a cluster of little strawberries, made by Tiffany & Co., which is very cute. You must Google it. Jackie was named to the International Best Dressed List Hall of Fame in 1965. Most of her clothing is at the JFK Library and Museum. In 2012, Time magazine included her on its all-time 100 fashion icons list. And in 2016, Forbes included her on their top 10 fashion icon list too. Jackie has lots of things named after her. 2 schools, a reservoir in Central Park, a municipal art society, medals for those who make an outstanding contribution to the city of New York, a hall at George Washington University, a garden at the White House, an American Ballet Theatre School, and an award, and a white gazebo on N. Madison Street in Middleburg, Virginia. Don't know when it's meant to be North Madison Street. N. Madison Street. So, where can we get some TV and film fix of Jackie? She inspired the 1981 TV series Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy by Jacqueline Smith, the 1983 miniseries Kennedy, where she was played by Blair Brown, which was by Mariana Bishop. She's played by Mariana Bishop, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Roma Downey in the 1991 miniseries A Woman Named Jackie. She's played by Rhoda Griffiths in 92 film Love Field, by Stephanie Romanoff in the 2000 film 13 Days, which is about the Cuban Missile Crisis, by Jill Hennessy in the 2001 film Jackie, Ethel and Joan, The Women of Camelot. She's played by Jacqueline Bisset in the 2003 film America's Prince, The JFK Story. There's a 2009 film Grey Gardens, which is epic. She was played by Katie Holmes in the 2011 miniseries The Kennedys, 2013 film The Butler, 2013 film Killing Kennedy, 2014 film LBJ, And she's also played by Natalie Portman in the 2016 film Jackie. And finally, she is played by Jodie Balfour in Netflix series The Crown. Woo! So all this press harassment that Jackie suffered in her life, she did take one member of the paparazzi, John Gallela, to court for harassment and invasion of privacy, which resulted in a restraining order forbidding him to come within 30 feet of her or her children. After JFK's death, she very briefly dated Winston Churchill's son, Randolph. She also dated architect Jack Warnick after John's death, and Warnick, sorry if that's wrong, continued to send her Valentine's cards right up until the day she died. That's adorable. She also dated British aristocrat David Ormsey Gore, Lord Harlech, but turned down his proposal to marry Aristotle Onassis. Oh, that's cute. While she was working at Doubleday as an editor, she worked on Michael Jackson's autobiography, Moonwalk. There she acquired nearly 100 works over the course of her career of over 19 years. For the last decade of her life, she had a very quiet love affair with Morris Templesman. He was with her when she passed away and read the poem Ithaca by C.B. Cavafy at her funeral. He was a mild man, an unassuming choice, being one of a select group of diamond buyers that worked directly with De Beers stockpiling diamonds. If you have not heard of De Beers' advertising campaign, Diamonds Are Forever, you need to go and look it up. It is the most clever advertising stunt ever pulled. And to this day, we still believe diamonds are rare because of their advertising campaign. It's insane. Just Google it. De Beers. Debeers. De Beers. It's crazy. Anyway, yes. So being Jewish, he was seen as an unlikely suitor for Jackie, but they were apparently very, very happy together. Quotes from Jackie, or my favourite quote from Jackie. The first time you marry for love, the second time for money, and the third for companionship. So John was the man she loved, Aristotle had the money, and Morris, who she didn't really marry but was as good as married to, was for companionship. So Jackie Kennedy captivated a nation and the rest of the world with her beauty, her intelligence, and her grace. With a deep sense of devotion to her family and her country, she dedicated herself to raising her children and making the world a better place through art, literature, and a respect for history. Even at her lowest moments, she was a beacon of poise, hope, and undeniable glamour. And as a museum curator, I wholeheartedly support the efforts of Jackie in preserving the history of the United States. So there we go. That is Jackie Kennedy. I am now going to go on and film our next episode, which is a special request from one of our Herstory fans. So, yeah, if you want to comment below, let me know who you would like to see an episode about, or hop on over to the Facebook page, which is called the Herstory Girls. You can also look me up on Patreon, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and also I would be very, very grateful if you would hit that subscribe button, because it genuinely means the world, and that's how you get your content out there and seen by people, like-minded people, to enjoy, is by being a subscriber. And that way you can hit the notification button, and then every time I release a new video, you will get told about it and you can join in the fun. So thank you for joining me. for, I was going to say Jackie O then, I'm not, for Jackie Onassis, Kennedy Onassis, Bouvier, whatever. And I shall see you next time for another episode of Herstory.